Welcome to my Jurassic Isle. Here for the last year, I've spent a time doing a Jurassic Park inspired build, complete with dinosaurs of all shapes and sizes in all sorts of ways, along with a visitor center right in the middle of it all. Today, I'm going to show you something I'm personally proud of, using some inspiration and a lot of screenshots. I was able to recreate this gate, and every time people came by, of course, the tune from Jurassic Park would pop into their head, and so I would be remiss if we didn't play that faithfully. So just a little bit of redstone note block magic to make things happen. I never really done any work with note blocks before, and I'm not a musician, so using some software to help translate the song into the right chords for the note block, and then referring on one of the ISV members who is musically inclined to kind of give some feedback on timing and things like that, we were able to make something work that worked really, really well. It actually came out very nicely, and it really brings home the feel for the gate. Now, one of my goals in recreating the Jurassic Park experience, knowing I couldn't recreate the park faithfully to its size and scale and layout, was to embrace the visual cues, right? Your line of sight and the experience of being in a jungle and on a dinosaur island. So almost every spot we go to on my island, we are kind of focused in, or I try to make us focused in, on what's going on right here and right now. Even though you might get glimpses in the background, you're not gonna really notice it. You're gonna look at what's in front of you first, primarily. No scene or recreation of Jurassic Park would be welcome if not for the very first scene in the movie where we are embraced in awe at the magnanimity of a dinosaur. They have a dinosaur. It's that moment when Dr. Grant grabs Ellie Sattler's head in the Jeep and turns her face towards the dinosaur, and they both, taking their glasses off, stand with their jaws open. Now, I know on screen this may or may not seem impressive, but when you consider that here I am standing next to it, this is a big boy. This is a big boy. Very, very big. Most of the dinosaurs on the park, my goal was to make them kind of approximately 30 blocks, and either in length or height. And my reason for that actually came down to the first dinosaur that I built, which was a T-Rex. Yes, I'll say that again. We've got a T-Rex. So here we can see the Brachiosaurus as it stands, leaning against a tree and munching on some snacks. It's got to have a little bit of branch to be eating on. And another memorable moment from the movie, of course, is when Dr. Grant and the kids are hiding up in the tree. And since my friend that I met here on ISV helped kind of come up with some of the thickening of it, because I wasn't doing a great job making it feel heavy, she came over with some of that and also gave me, we talked about how to texture with my block choice, because I chose strange blocks. I wanted to use kind of unusual blocks or designs for them, and I opted to go for more natural as opposed to colorful. So I went with tough, and then they introduced some of the other corals and things to really help with the mossy bits. But that is Upside Insanity, and so I have a little statuette of Upside, beating the Vegisaur. Because that's what it is. Next up on our tour is not a dinosaur. Well, sort of a dinosaur. You might be able to hear them coming around in here. I wanted Velociraptors because roar. But Velociraptors are small. They're teeny tiny little dinosaurs. and especially compared to the scale of a 30 block tall Brachiosaur. Um, when I was trying to build a Velociraptor on stream, my stream and I had a hard time kind of coming up with some of the designs, and they end up being like 10 or 15 blocks tall. And they don't feel very, very Velociraptor like. And it would have been hard to put them in a scene that would make sense, even in the visitor center. I didn't even build a big kitchen because I wouldn't be able to figure out how to put the Velociraptors in there. So instead, I decided to, again, using visual and in this case some audio cues, I wanted to capture one of the moments from the movie, from the first movie, where we're introduced to the Velociraptors, and that's when they're in their pit. Oh, look, there's one now. The OG Velociraptor. But that was the feeding scene where they have the little crane hoisting in the cow and goes down into the pit to be feasted upon. So this was fun because this is the only dinosaur exhibit that doesn't have real dinosaurs in it. But my hope is it captures the impression and the emotion of that danger of the Velociraptor pit, right? Having the chains and the things. Of course, I also have a tower back here. Wasn't really sure what was in the tower, so I just put up some gear. ACU comes from another Jurassic Park game. That's the asset containment unit, and maybe like a little visual or observation deck, and then maybe a more control center. Now, before the Skulk Streakers came about, I was planning on using phantoms to help give that raptor sound because they're a pretty cool raptor sounding thing. Also, a little nod to my Phantom SMP friends. Hi, Phantoms. But I didn't want to release them, and this one's clever, and that one, if we could see its name, is blue. So, a little nod to the Velociraptors of the Jurassic Park series. No Jurassic Park premise would be complete without something of an east dock, and since this is actually the eastward direction going into the ocean, I thought, how perfect is that? So I have this little trail that comes down here, and because this is Minecraft, there are two things to know. One, it's really hard to capture movement in life with still blocks, just, so you know. Secondly, during this past year, we had the Minecraft Live event where they were introducing the 1.20, what we would come to know as the Trails and Tails update, and the mob vote was happening. Now, the mob vote consisted of the glare, which would show you spooky dark spots that you need to light up, or the rascal, which would be just what it sounds like, a little creature to come, I don't know, leprechaun catching cave thing. It was weird. And then the third one was, or the first one, I guess, of the mob vote was the Sniffer. Now, we all know that the Sniffer came about since this is happening well after that event. However, at the time, I was very much vote Sniffer. So, to help encourage that, I actually built a monument to the Sniffer, and I have my own. The first Axy's OG Sniffer. This was so good. This was so much fun to build. And the day I built this, Exhumavoid on Hermitcraft was building his little Sniffer, and he put up a little speech bubble that said vote Sniffer. So I put up a little speech bubble that said vote Sniffer because vote Sniffer. It's a cool mob. And now that it's been implemented, I'm glad I voted Sniffer because it's so cute. So adorable. Love it. Should be down. That should be down. I have foxes who visit my base and flip all my trapdoors. Don't ask. But yes, here is the Sniffer and all of its custom glory of my build, trying to emulate what it looked like as presented on the little video. And I think now that we actually have them in game, I did a pretty good job. I kind of nailed it. Be proud of what you do. So the Sniffer isn't the only thing over here. I have a couple other elements that kind of came about in different times. The first being the Dilaphosaurus. Again, a Jurassic Park kind of inspired system. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for some friends. And definitely Sammy Terry is one of my good ISV friends, one of my closest Java playing friends. And we were talking about what to do with this hill over here because I had no idea. And she asked if she could do something. So I was like, go for it. And she opted to build the dinosaur. She opted to build the little Dilaphosaurus. So one of the goals with the Dilaphosaurus always was to have it spitting. And for a while, we just had some glass to kind of simulate some spit. But I decided to toss up a little bit of redstone. And so if you get a little too close, well, it just might spit at you. Of course, no adventure with the Dilaphosaurus would be complete with the East Dock sign and all, if not for this little scene kind of highlighting from when Dennis Nedry crashed his car, his Jeep, trying to get to the East Dock right into the roadside. And of course, I had to have an East Dock. Now, originally, I was looking at building something out here to maybe make some farms for some of the aquamarine life, like squids. But there's too much ocean and kelp and drowned and not very good for squids. So I opted instead to convert this into an actual dock where we could have things out and about. And I have included some food supplies for some of the creatures here at the island. But I did want to have a dock, nice little falls coming from the Sniffer. And of course, I have the helipad, so I needed the helicopter. I did consider having it kind of leaning forward a little bit because a helicopter would lean forward as it's flying, but it's kind of hard to do in Minecraft with squares and blocks the way I had it. So instead, I opted to just kind of keep it flat and steady. Now, this is based off of, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, so my oldest might need to correct me, but I believe it's an Augusta 109 helicopter is what they used in the movie. And so that was my inspiration to put this together. Of course, I have our mods, and our mods at the time, big mods that we saw everywhere, was Ashley Cloud and Kincentric. They've been around Impulse and Crew a very long time. And of course, we had to have the guest. Now, I don't have Dr. Sattler, Grant, Ian Malcolm, and the lawyer, but instead, I have the Zitz crew. We got Impulse, his best buds, Skizzleman, Zedaf, and Tango Tech coming to the island. And I'm not going to lie, there's a part of me that would really, really want to see how they would react on a real life dinosaur island. I think those four would be absolutely hilarious. And coming back up from the East Dock, we come into a part, not really part from the Jurassic Park series, but this is something that would have existed within the visitor center. And I needed a place where I could maybe try out some different vehicles and just fill up some of the space anyway. And so I opted to build this little garage where I have a couple of variations on the Jeeps. And I've included a little forklift along with the Jeeps being serviced, lifted, and hoisted up as maybe necessary. So this was kind of fun and a good way for me to explore some of the alternatives and what was here. And of course, I have foxes and friends who come by and mess with my levers. What friends are for, right? Right? And definitely one of my pride and joys in terms of the visual cues from bringing in some Jurassic Park is the Visitor Center. It's such an iconic building, and you really see it from the different angles, especially if you embrace scenes from the movie, although I have trees in the way. But if you embrace some scenes from the movie where you can really see like when they approached the Visitor Center and come up to it. I added the vehicles out in the front as they're getting ready to go on the tour. It's not a true exact replica of the center, but it's definitely got that inspired by feel to it. And I'm very happy with how the whole thing has really turned out. Everything from looking down on the walkway and the water to even the flower beds on the side feels very jungly and lush and It was very fun to just kind of put this together. Of course, going into the visitor center, you have to be hit almost immediately with the fossil that's present, right? It's got the big T-Rex fossil. And again, good friend Sammy Terry, she came by for a visit, and we were just hanging out one day, talking about stuff. She was asking what I was going to do in here, and I wasn't sure. And so I grabbed some blocks and started to build, and she asked if she could put some petrified mushrooms in here. So I have a little petrified forest inside, and the T-Rex to complement. We threw up some scaffolding here as well, because definitely part of the movie. And the little amethyst block is mostly just a little play toy, so we can go up there and fire rockets off. Here to the right of the entrance is my gift shop, where we have little goodies and different head plushies and things. My gift shop vendors I use primarily for repairing and also getting a couple of materials, but I've named them after the various characters and people we would have experienced on the island. And the galaxy map. This was a project that took months to do. James Webb Telescope Cosmic Cliffs image, which was led by our good friend Ember Vixa. This was like her first time mapping, and it was also my first time mapping. It's using a staircase mapping technique, and it goes off of a 4x3 map. But I mean, zoomed in, you can kind of see the Minecraft pixelation to it, the little wavy bits. But I mean, from just looking at it, it looks like artwork hanging on the wall. And I'm very, very proud to have it hanging in my visitor center. It's a very cool piece. I think the gift shop is a great place to have it. Coming around the gift shop, or next to the gift shop, is the kitchenette area. I didn't want to do the full buffet or actual kitchen just for some spacing reasons, but I ended up throwing this little diner and cafe. We might grab a bite, check out the window. You might see dinosaur, Brachiosaurus walking by, look down on the Velociraptors, as it were. But yeah, this is where I go to do smelting and such. And for a while, I was cooking meats in here before I got the villagers set up. Of course, I have my storage along the back. That's not very interesting. But here up front, I also have this command center ran by the LAs. No, they're very eager trying to get to help me with stuff, even though we don't got anything going on right now. But I wanted to have an area where we had some recreations of the computers and the general command area. Had the map on the wall showing all the things that we'll see, and good spot for my enchanting setup. So, when things get a little hard on the island, this is the place to go to make sure things stay in order, I guess. So as we come up the stairs and around the corner, I wanted to have a space where I could have some sort of lab, because you got to have this lab, right? In the original movie, they took a tour in like a little carousel ride, and they ended up stopping and going into the actual science lab. So I wanted to bring that here to some degree. So I've done that, done some major decorating, put in all these little like sci-fi bits. I figured this could be some sort of like holograph or clear glass instruction screen, microscopes, and all sorts of different technologies and beakers and fun stuff that you might have in and around your science lab. Of course, bringing in some of the hermits, we got Etho, Life Finds a Way. Absolutely. And one of the members of the ISV community, Drowsysaur, who is kind of a personification of a dinosaur, she's checking out the baby dinos, the soon-to-be raptor eggs, as they will be hatched. But a lot of the material that's in here, things like the science table and whatnot, was inspired by someone I found on YouTube, Average Tuna Sandwich. So thank you for that. I thought it was pretty cool, and definitely go check them out and see what else they got that's you might like, be inspired by. Now, somewhat interesting is one of the last dinosaurs I ever made ended up being an aquatic creature, and it is this beaut, the Mosasaurus. This would be from the Lost World series, where it's more like an alligator fish. And we can actually see, I didn't just build a head sticking out of the water. I built the whole thing. He comes down. And we had this little hole down here in the water already. And I thought, how cool would it be if he like lived in this cave and just kind of swam his way up out from time to time. And in this case was munching on something during the whole body. Gotta have the whole dinosaur there. He's a little longer than 30 blocks, I think, but you have to because he's a whale of a creature. Of course, we have a little submarine instead of a shark being eaten here. This is a two-sided homage. One, in the Lost World, he actually is swimming in the water and eats a sub. But two, on my Phantom SMP, we had a boat building competition where there was a no wood allowed. We had to build boats, no wood permitted, and one of the members, Mystical Mel, built herself a yellow submarine. Now, we all like to kind of goad each other a little bit. So we dubbed the yellow submarine the Twinkie. And so a little bit of payback, I guess. She's put it over here. This is the Jurassic Twinkie. Little one-man submersible. Little one-man submersible. But this was really well done, and I appreciated the little prank adding on, a little homage to my Bedrock SMP, which is always great to have and support. But I wanted the mouth to be frightening and slimy and icky and kind of disgusting. So I took some time and I actually figured out this nice tongue kind of look and vibe to it because I wanted it to feel like it was coming up to eat you. So this was interesting. This was the first time I'd ever done something like a mouth. And I took advantage of the glow lichen because it is kind of like saliva and it feels like mucus of some kind. So definitely an interesting build. It was fun to do. Of course, one of the first trips on the Jurassic Park tour was past the T-Rex paddock. Now, again, this isn't a one-to-one recreation of the Jurassic Park island, so I had to make do with what I had, and for a long while, I had plans to take advantage of this ravine that was here. And of course, I was going to do the classic T-Rex paddock and pit, but I realized just with the scale, I would end up pretty much just making like this whole space over here into the T-Rex paddock, and then I wouldn't have room for things like the visitor center and what would be the Sniffer and other spots. So I kind of changed my plans a little bit, but not too terribly much. As we come down the road, we can see there he is. There's my boy, the very first dinosaur I made, the T-Rex. Look at that eye just staring at you. Added in this little viewing platform, not only to check him out, but also because if you look down, you can see that I did include the Jeep. Excuse me, not a Jeep, it's a Ford. The tour car crashed along the bottom of the ravine. Added some sound effects. We actually have some Ravagers stowed about to give us that effect. But here he is in all of his glory. T-Rex breaking through the fence. Now in the Lost World, the T-Rex found his way to San Diego where he was thirsty and had a little snack. So dangling from his mouth was a doghouse. I'll let you figure out what the snack was. And in the first movie, he was trained to eat goats. You might remember Lex say, "Where's the goat gone?" So how fitting would it be to have a little goat dangling from his mouth? Again, I put a little Ravager in his tummy. It gives just a little bit of noise when you're checking him out. But one of my favorite things building this guy, especially when I was trying to figure out scale for him, is this feels like the right scale, what I would expect. You know, maybe feet might be a little big, but that's blocky nature. But I don't know. This feels like it would be a very intimidating creature to have come growling up and roaring next to you. And of course, I had to embrace the scene where he's breaking out from the actual fence line. So I have bits of it broken, fallen down, broken cabling, muddy prints as he's walking and traipsing along. A little callback to maybe this is where he was snacking on something before. here's my T-Rex. I'm very proud of him. Like I said, it was one of my first dinosaurs I ever made. So right next to the T-Rex, we have like I said before, the Ford kind of fall down into the ravine. It's got its smoky bits going on. Have a little sewer drain coming out, which is where the little red panda had her secret base for a bit during a server-wide game that we had going on. But not only is the smoke down there kind of bringing it up, but a little bit of fun. Have some explosives. Kind of gives the feeling of something happening. Visuals, sounds, everything makes the entire build feel more alive. And that's very important when you're putting these together. Our next up on our tour, again, slightly related to the T-Rex, is kind of an homage to the scene where the lawyer, Gennaro, is afraid because the T-Rex is getting ready to break out. So he goes running off into the bathroom. So I wanted to have a bathroom stall of some sort. Did up the banner, which I was very happy to kind of find out how to make these. That was kind of a cool experience. But I built this little restroom stall area, and to a little toilet and some toilet paper on the wall. Of course, we get to take advantage of a Java trick where you can have an item frame with an item in it on top of something like a button. So that kind of puts together. But I wanted to capture that Gennaro, and so there he is. Got to have Corrales in here doing his business. He's just got the perfect face. This is a hilarious moment. It's definitely something in the download. I hope the ISV group, as people who haven't seen or experienced the island, get to come by. And I would love to hear, hit me up on Twitter at Axynim, comment on it, on what you thought when you first saw that, because we all laughed. My absolute favorite IRL dinosaur has to be the Stegosaurus. It is such a cool creature, learning some more about it and how it works. But building it here on ISV was definitely a fun, pleasurable experience and a challenge to boot. Because it is my favorite in real life, I knew I had to take my time with it and get it just right with what I wanted. And come to find out, it's also Impervix's favorite. So that was cool. But building this whole thing, I wanted to, with all other things I did on ISV, push myself to be challenged. I wanted to really push my organic building envelope, as it were, and try new things. So my first mission, keeping this hill intact, was I wanted to build a dinosaur on a diagonal, right? Secondly, my go-to always has been with all of the dinosaurs, build them out of otherwise unusual blocks, not something people would just navigate to for building something like this. But also I wanted to try to keep that 30 block scale, and I wanted to make sure there was life, right? The T-Rex is busting through the fence, he's walking and making obvious movements, got the goat bouncing, etc. We got the Brachiosaurus standing against the trees. This guy needed to be doing something. And with the hill and on the diagonal, I thought, how cool would it be if he was walking around? And before I built him, again, had Sammy Terry just hanging out one day, we opted to convert this hill into a little hot spring waterfall. And so I thought, how great would it be for the Stegosaurus to be coming over here maybe to get a little drinky drink? So I wanted to angle him that way. So coming up and around the hill, he's turning and stomping all over. I got different elevation with his feet, and I kind of modeled him very much after a turtle, a lot of turtles. And for a period of time, I was on my beach where I have some turtles, and I stood on the fence, kind of like so, and I just watched them and how they moved, because I was trying to figure out how you make a square be diagonal shape. Squares don't go on diagonals. It's very hard with some of the Minecraft blocks. So it took me a while to get it, and I think I nailed it. And using, again, kind of some unique blocks for eyes and whatnot, I wanted to really highlight how cute and adorable they were, but I mean, they are a creature. So with a turtle inspiration, this is the only dinosaur on the island you could boop this dude. That's right. His nose is the only one you can actually boop. But I have him up here. He's stomping around. You feel his size, his girth, his weight. And I hope the spikes show some endearing danger. Building the blades on the back was kind of a challenge for scale, and probably not as many as there would be for a Stegosaurus of this size, but Minecraft. On the adventure on the island is probably the simplest dinosaur of the batch, but one that I'm still very proud of, and that is the Triceratops. This Triceratops ended up being an even split nose, but I needed it for the mouth, and so it was kind of sad I had to do that for the horn. But the Triceratops, looking fabulous, had to get him out here, and actually the silhouettes from the nether tunnel helped because I did them like out of wool blocks first, so I knew what shape I wanted to do. And when I started to build them, that's kind of what I did. Is I just brought over the wool blocks and I just kind of stacked them up in the same silhouette shape, and then I filled in with color, trying to embrace the Jurassic Park scene, right? And where we see him is he's sickly or she's sickly, and she's on the ground, and the scientists come up to explore her in the area. Right, really fascinated. Dr. Grant's leaning on her. So I was trying to figure out how I could get the dinosaur laying down. I didn't like it. There wasn't enough movement. It looked like a big blob of copper when I set it out. So I kind of scrapped that and just went with a traditional standing up dinosaur, but I still wanted to give it that life. So I wanted to bring in, a moment of hilarity from the movie, because that's a big pile of poo. And our fearless ISV community leader, Real Soji, she's spectacular. Definitely go check her out on Twitch too. But to bring in some of that life, what I did for the Triceratops is, since I couldn't get good life laying down, having it stand up, it had to be eating, and I really liked the mouth look. So I really liked the head and the crest and the mouth feel to it. So having it eat some lilac is just kind of a perfect nod to the Triceratops scene from the classic Jurassic Park, because West Indian lilac might be known to cause problems. Here, the Pteranodon flying high overhead in the majestic park. They weren't too popular during the movies. We see them a few times. They caused some problems, definitely in the second one and throughout the Lost World. But here on the original Jurassic Park, I never really caught them. But I wanted to have one. I have all this space above my base. I wanted to use it, and ended up building this guy. I probably should have built him a little higher up, just because he is so big. You see too much of him from the ground. And like the other dinosaurs, I wanted to make sure to stick with that about 30 block kind of idea. So tip to tail, he's about 30 blocks. Same with the wingspan. Now building it when I first started, the look from the ground was interesting, because without the wings, it kind of looked like a fish. And I had showed a screenshot into the ISV Discord where Ruby Red commented how it looks like a sky dolphin. But my little sky dolphin here is actually a Pteranodon. And again, I wanted to use some kind of potentially unusual blocks, and so I grabbed the new mud that had been released, and I used gilded blackstone for its eye, because it's fantastic. I did struggle during the build to get the wingspan just right. Again, I wanted to give it some life, so I wanted to have the wing not just be flat, but look like it was maybe fluttering or floating as he was turning, getting ready to turn, hence the feet kind of being at different angles. But the arms themselves, it was just a little bit of a struggle to get them done right. And I ended up getting some help from one of my viewers, Tiz. She sent me like a skeletal image of one of the flying creatures. And so I realized what I was doing wrong with my shape, and so I kind of embraced that a lot more. And getting it done, I mean, it really, especially from above, you really see the structure of the dinosaur itself, and I'm kind of proud of it. I think it's a good size, it's a good scale. I've thought about putting more in the sky, but I don't want to take away, again, line of sight, right? Visual acuity throughout the park. You can already see this guy from everywhere. So I think having more up here would actually create issues where people would see things that I don't necessarily want them to see all the time. It takes away. So just the one for now is fine. I did play around with the idea of having a hang glider with like Imp and Skizz hang gliding with it. I thought that'd be kind of cool. One of the memorable scenes from Jurassic Park, at least for me, has to be when they're climbing over the fence. Dr. Sattler is in the emergency power-up bunker, trying to turn the power back on to the park. And Dr. Grant and the kids are climbing up and over. Dr. Grant and Lexi are on the ground with Timmy, afraid, climbing over. I thought to honor that scene with these armor stands with Imp and Skizz. The week I was doing this, I was listening to the Imp and Skizz podcast. And in that podcast, the guys were talking about what their life was like. And Impulse looks up to Skizzleman kind of as a mentor. And Skizz feels very protective over Impulse. So that kind of solved it for me as far as who's going to be in which role. And of course, Impulse up on the fence as it's being electrocuted. Skizz there, ready to catch him no matter what. And then of course, Rill, probably more interested in the hilarity of the moment, is calling out Skizz's go-to, somebody clip it. But the other fun bit, and the reason I come here is because I accidentally built a scenic overlook. So as the sun sets here in the park, we get to see and experience going behind the Brachiosaur. Wasn't my intent when I built the Brachiosaur. It kind of happened on accident. And like Bob Ross, I like happy little accidents. And like the sun setting behind me, so concludes my adventures here on ISV and building my Jurassic Park inspired base. I hope you all enjoyed the tour, and I will see you next time.